All right, guys, today we are talking about Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, which we went and saw several days ago in theaters because it's the only way worth seeing it, and we're going to talk about it for you guys. So I guess we'll go same thing as last time, some things we liked, and then we'll jump into things we didn't like at the end.
Perfect.
But we'll start off with things we liked about the film.
Yeah. It was really humorous throughout the film too. I think it kept a really good tone of. It's like the director kind of knew that they were all like in on the joke that they were making. So I think that that lightheartedness that they captured really I think hit audiences pretty well from my experience. So that was a big one for me, at least.
Yeah, I really liked it. I really laughed a lot. Had a lot of laugh out loud moments for me. Two things that really stood out to me were the cinematography and the score. The cinematography was just so clean and everything looked so beautiful that had a huge appreciation for the cinematographer and the work that they did on that movie. And then I would notice the score, especially as it swelled for the grandiose wide shots. I was like, wow, this is so good, so enjoyable. Those were my two things.
I really liked the cast. I thought the casting was really well done. Everyone, even though they had a bunch of big name actors, everybody felt right for their role. And so that was, I think, for like I think for a kind of movie.
Preach it, sister. To the choir.
Yes, Lord.
I think for a movie that relies on its cast, like whodunit murder mysteries where you have only the cast that's bringing in new information, that is one of the most important parts, and I think that they cast it really well.
Absolutely. Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc is just such perfect casting. I love him so much.
He's super fun to watch.
He's hilarious.
You can tell
very likable too. Very likable.
You can tell he's having fun in this movie, and I think that's one of the best. Like, I love watching. Like, that's why I love live performances so much. Is I love watching actors having fun, and like you can tell, like, okay, this is like, you know, this is a role you don't get to do often, and you're gonna have fun with it, and I love that. Like, I love those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any problems or issues with the movie?
I think overall, the way I see it, and I'm coming from a perspective that I have not seen the first film, so
really?
Shame.
Might, I have some homework to do after this review.
Okay, so I haven't seen the first film since like it came out, so it's been a long time for me. So I didn't remember a lot from the first one.
Gotcha. So that's my caveat. I think overall, to me, it felt like a mixed bag as far as how the movie was structurally created. I think more in the editing and the way the writing worked. The components that they were trying to use, I think they kind of put themselves into a corner where they can only go with the option that they went with. And I think it turned out to be more of maybe a little bit confusing. And just a little bit off pace overall.
Interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by they wrote themselves into a corner?
They had a lot of different almost Easter eggs that they would have in like the first part of this sequence of the film, where, you know, blink if you miss it, but I think they kept retelling it from different angles to the point where maybe they didn't trust the audience that they were going to pick up on those subtle hints. I think it felt a little bit redundant in my opinion. Just how when they do like any, you know, reveals or you see the other side of the coin, so to speak, I think it becomes less satisfying at a rewatch.
I think the biggest uphill struggle that I had with this movie was they waited a really long time to initiate the emotional investment that we were supposed to have in the movie. So in Knives Out, you're introduced to all of the characters And it becomes clear pretty quickly, probably within like the first 20 minutes of the movie, why solving this mystery is so important and what the stakes are. Because it's not the fact that like someone got murdered and someone else might get murdered. You have the main character, I don't remember her name, Maria. And, you know, she has like her family's stabilities on the line. You have all of these things that you're rooting for her with, you know, her trying to evade getting like suspected, but also trying to find the real killer. And it's this game of cat and mouse and you're watching it unfold and you're literally on the edge of your seat the entire time. Versus with this movie, it sets it up as all of these really unlikable characters are put in on this island. And you're supposed to dislike them. And, you know, they did a very good job of that. And I think they did almost too good of a job. Whereas you're watching the movie, you don't really care who's going to die. Like all of the people that they've introduced, you have one reason why you dislike them or another. And I think that it kind of worked against itself where if the detective didn't figure out who the murderer was or what was going on, I didn't really mind if someone died because I didn't like the people who were there. So I was okay if any one of them were picked off, where I was like, well, we kind of have a reason to dislike everybody. And so I think that was really hard to go so long into the movie with that lens going through. And so I think Nick was kind of getting at this too, and he's talking about writing themselves into the corner. They relied a lot on the end, like this like twist reveal, probably like 60% into the movie, to kind of show, like, they kind of, like, peel back another layer. And you're like, oh, my gosh. And I'm like, I wish this had happened so much sooner because I would have been so much more invested if I had, like, known that that was what was really going on. And the stakes would have been so much higher, but they just waited so long to set them up. And so I think that was kind of... it was a choice, and I don't know if I agree with it.
So I think, for me, the minor issue that I had with this film, and it wasn't even that big, was just that the first film had such a high bar to reach, and to try and be better than the first movie was practically impossible. And this film, just the story wasn't as interesting for me as the first one was. It just didn't captivate me as much. And so that was like my only like minor problem with the film. And the pandemic thing just kind of threw me off. I just
It was so weird. I hated that so much.
That was like a personal gripe that I had with like in the first 10 minutes, we're being reminded of something that we don't really want to think about.
For at least a couple of years.
It's
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like you could have gotten away with that like in maybe at the end of like 2020 or like, you know, first quarter 2021. But at this point, like, I don't think audiences want to be reminded of that fact, even though I think they portrayed like the tropes of that time pretty accurately, and like they made some good like references of that era. But
it took me out of the movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I actually am going to push back on your point.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary made the point, just to reiterate, that it took you too long to become emotionally invested with any of the characters. And for me, having seen the first film and knowing Benoit Blanc, he was my emotional point for the movie. And as long as he was in the movie, I was totally fine with it because I was rooting for him to find the person. And ultimately, like, once you figure out who his Watson, quote unquote, is going to be, that's like an exciting additional emotional hook for me. But for me, the emotional hook was Benoit Blanc, because I didn't watch any of the trailers, so I didn't know who we were rooting for. I didn't like see much of the promotional material, and so I didn't know, you know, what was going to happen. And so him being the character that I rooted for, I was able to stick with that the whole time, and I actually really enjoyed figuring out who I was going to be rooting for the movie, because I felt like I kind of swayed between different characters of being like, ooh, do I like this person? Do I like this person? Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? I really enjoyed that.
I think going back to your other comment about why, like, standing up to the being a sequel to Knives Out, and I think that the biggest obstacle when you have a sequel movie is you have to raise the stakes in that movie. So I think
okay, hold on. I'm pushing back here. I don't think this is a sequel movie. This isn't a sequel. This is another part of a series, but it's not a sequel because there's no references to the first movie. There's nothing that references the first movie. Even when the person talks to Blanc and is like, oh my gosh, you're the detective who did this. They don't reference the first movie. They reference an entirely fictitious like story that we've never heard of before. So it's not a sequel. This is just another movie that happens to have the same detective in it, which is how I think they did a good job of getting around the problem that sequels usually have. That it's so hard to measure up to something that's so good in a first one because they have a good story and good characters, and they have to try and figure out a way to raise the stakes and elevate the movie. This one didn't have that because it was its own film, just with a single character that you knew from another movie. But it was unrelated to the first movie in story and characters.
I guess I mean that in like the stakes were lower in this movie than they were in the previous one.
Which I think was fine because I don't think you didn't have to compare it to the first one. Spoilers, cut to this part of the video as soon as this happens.
Okay. Burning the freaking Mona Lisa made me so angry. I don't care that it was fictional. It made me so mad. Oh my gosh. I love Leonardo da Vinci. And they were like, let's burn his painting to make a statement. I know it wasn't real, but that made me so mad.
I mean, I was kind of okay with that because I'm figuring the Edward Norton's character is probably dumb enough to get like a fake copy.
It's not even the real.
That was what I was figuring as well.
I feel like that could be open to interpretation. I think the symbology of the art burning was like strong enough for that character to feel like, ruined. So I think it worked as far as that went.
For me, the reason that it pissed me off was not because it was the Mona Lisa. It was because of the whole thing that's been happening recently. If you don't know, a bunch of different activists will go to different art things and attempt to ruin those art pieces for the sake of like art and then glue themselves to whatever it is. Yeah. And I did not like that call back just because I don't think that's not something you should be doing right now. So that's what pissed me off about that.
I think that it's probably a timing issue of like...
I think it was.
The movie was already made when that happened. But that made me so mad. Oh, I was going to say, what do you guys think of the twin twist? Because I feel like that's kind of like one of their biggest moments.
I enjoyed it. It was great.
Was it something you saw coming?
No. I'm not the kind of person who I've trained myself that when I go into a movie, I'm not trying to analyze the movie. If I catch myself trying to analyze the movie is bad because it did not hook me. Because I started getting to a point where I would analyze a film as I was watching it, and I hated 90% of the movies that I went and watched because I was just analyzing them. So I had to like turn that part of my brain off. I will analyze a movie second time through, but realistically, if I'm watching a movie and I catch myself analyzing it, it's a bad movie. So if I go through a movie and I'm like, oh, that was so cool, that was a good twist, and I enjoyed the movie. So that was me for this one. I really enjoyed it. I didn't see it coming. But I thought it was a good twist and a good way to do it.
Sure. I think it kind of fit with like the thematic elements in the film, where it's just kind of almost to like a soap opera extent, like, oh, she has a twin and she's going into it and all that. I kind of like that it was a little bit over the top in that way. I just don't, I think they could have like tightened the sequences of us then having to rewatch like the whole first act of the movie. I think that's where I more take issue with, I think all the bones of what they had are there, just the execution just didn't quite pan out in one way or another.
I really wish we had been introduced to her as Abigail. I don't remember the character's name, but I wish we had been introduced to her way sooner. Like, I think they waited too long for the reveal.
And see, that's why I think the rewatch value of this movie is so high, because going back, she is one of the first people you meet, but you don't realize that until second viewing. But she's the one who destroys the box, and we watch her destroy the box, but you don't know that until second time watching. And then it all of a sudden makes sense why she smashes that box to go for it. It's not because
it's her
ex-husband's box. It's because her sister was killed and she's trying to find the murderer. So I think your enjoyment of the film is going to go up on second viewing because of what you know, having watched it the first time.
I guess then we'd have to ask the question: is it more important to have a movie that isn't like what's more important, the first view or the second view of a movie?
Definitely the first view. because that's ultimately what audiences are going to sit through.